Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast. It's the big one. It's the biggest game of the season. Is the North London derby. And we are going to be previewing it today alongside Ben. How are you, Ben?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Thanks for having me back on.
Great to have you back on, Ben. And we have Si. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very well, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. And of course, we have Johnny. How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm all right. I am impressed by your
Way
fortitude.
to bring the mood down there, Johnny.
Yeah, Keith.
Where's the energy?
I'm awestruck. Jim, you're not feeling well at all, and there you are, like total pro. We're so blessed to have you because you should be on like primetime TV with that sort of attitude.
It's the
unbelievable.
I got sent home from work today for being too sick. That's how committed I am.
Oh,
yes,
respect.
There you go. But there's some exciting announcements coming up as well, so stay tuned to hear more. But essentially, we have Ben Bowman joining us on an episode in the coming weeks. The Hotspur Hippie, by popular request by many of you listeners, has also said he will join, so you'll get to see Paul coming on the show. And who else do we have? Oh, Tottenham Simpsons, you may recognise from Twitter. So Ross is going to be joining us as well. So we've got lots of great shows coming up. And another announcement is that we now have memberships. So if you're interested in joining memberships, we're going to be trialing things like Europa League live watch-alongs and making that content available there and releasing some early videos as well for that. So if you want to sign up a membership and support the channel, that would be much appreciated. If not, carry on with the good old-fashioned main show that we'll do on a weekly basis, and it will always remain paywall-free. So, guys, I think the big overarching topic on the North London derby right now, I'm going to start today with, is the injury debate. Arsenal have experienced their first kind of, you call it a bit of an injury pile-up versus, they haven't really had one in a couple of years like this. We had it last year, Newcastle had it last year, Man United had it last year, but City and Arsenal didn't seem to have much of a crisis, did they? But now they're looking at Calafiori's potentially out. Who else have they got? It's Marino, it's Odegaard, and
Rice.
Who else, sorry?
Rice.
And Rice is suspended. And Tomiyasu. So 3 potential nailed-on starters.
Jesus is only 25% likely as well.
And Jesus.
So they've got some significant ones there.
So 4 potentially out versus, based on today's training video, there was no Solanke or Van der Ven or Bissouma, but people are saying that might be old footage, so we'll get into that later. But based on the injuries, assuming Arsenal are without Jesus, Marino, Rice, Odegaard, and Calafiori, I'll start with you, Ben. Do you make us favourites for this fixture based on that?
I don't know about that. I hate this fixture, I really do. It's one of those ones where I can't ever look forward to it because the downside's too big. So I always dread it. I was in danger of creeping towards sort of semi-confident until people dropped that update about the training videos, and now I'm all the way back down again. I was close to being sort of, it's 50-50 game. We can, tricky one, because on paper there's no reason we shouldn't beat them. We outplayed them in April. As you say, lots of key players missing, especially if Jesus is missing, because the obvious thing would have been Havertz maybe drops back, Jesus up front, and it's not a change in shape really. But I'm news of those injuries. If Solanke is out, and obviously it's an if, and if Van der Ven in particular is out, then I struggle to be quite as confident. So I don't make us favourites, but I do think it's one that could go either way.
It's going to be interesting to see how Arteta really lines up with his team, isn't it, guys? Because I've been watching a lot of analysis on how they've been playing this season, and the big change from last season is how they're playing with these 2 6s behind the striker. But they haven't had that left-sided 6, the right player for that mould. So Marino was supposed to be that guy who was going to come in, and Calafiori is meant to be that left-footed defender who can invert and drop into that pocket of space as well. So that with those 2 guys out, they've been putting Rice in that position and then putting Partey deeper into midfield in what Rice would probably see as his strongest position normally. But now they're without Rice, that gets even more difficult. And of course, without Odegaard now, they've lost basically both their 6s positions are just a complete mess. So it's going to be interesting to see where they get the creativity from. Do you still think they're going to create a lot, Si? Are you still thinking we're going to be quite vulnerable on the breaks like we've been in previous games?
They're going to be dangerous, aren't they? I mean, they've built that squad over 5 years. They're 5 years ahead of us in their project. But I do wonder what legs they've got in that midfield, depending who they drop into there. So if you've got Partey and If you got, what are you going to have there? Partey, Jorginho, maybe Trossard. That's a 29, 31 and 32-year-old in there. We've definitely got legs in that midfield, in our midfield. Drop Havertz in there, you lose what he gives you up front, to Ben's point. And so I think that they might drop Trossard in there with Jorginho and Partey and leave Havertz up front. I think Havertz causes some problems up front. I think, to Ben's point, if we're looking at the who didn't train, I think the biggest worry for me would be Mickey not training, because that, coming back to your point about would we be open down the flanks, he allows us to play that higher line because he's got that such a recovery speed. I do think that, depends, will Sterling play maybe? He could play on the left with Saka on the right. That's two big threats. And sometimes I feel that we are just that little bit too adventurous with the inverting the fullbacks both at the same time and leaving the two central defenders and the sort of and Biss to cover. They're going to cause us problems. They're a good side. I mean, they ran Man City to within, what was it, 2 points last season, or 2 points last season. So, and they've strengthened in depth. So it's not going to be an easy game. But again, back to Ben's point, there was no way we should have been 3-0 down at half time. We met, Johnny. I think we met down for a pint at half time. Everybody was just like, "What's happened?" But then again, we shouldn't have scored 2 goals in the second half because they were better than us in the second half as well. So I think it's a 50-50. I think that midfield battle is going to be where it's won or lost, if I'm honest.
Well, that was going to be a question I had for Johnny, but you've answered where you think the battle's going to be for this game. I'm going to drop throughout this pod as well some statistics as we go on to why I'm kind of quietly hopeful that we have a good opportunity in this game, even though I do make it a 50-50 in my head. But last season, Saka, White and Odegaard, I believe, played every single Premier League game that season. Those three were there. And the majority of Arsenal's threats come from the right-hand side as well. So those three are absolutely critical. They read each other beautifully. But Arsenal fans are nervous about what it looks like when Odegaard drops out because he is the creator out of that trio that makes it all tick. So they're very interested to see, does that still work when Odegaard isn't in there? Hopefully, of course, it does not work and they have a disastrous game. But Johnny, where are we going to need to be strongest if we want to win this game? Is it defence or is it attack for you?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the lineup, doesn't it? And I was, like most other fans, probably assuming that it would be straightforward that Solanke would come straight back in, given that he was apparently close for the Newcastle game, and that's now going to be a fortnight since when we get to the NLD. So, I mean, I think if we've got him starting through the middle and Sonny goes out to the left, then that's all good. I'm a little bit worried still about our high line, and I think obviously Odegaard's a huge miss, but it's like both Ben and Si have mentioned, the personnel that they've got to draw on are not shabby at all. I mean, I think that they might have a pretty weak bench, but they've got the other option that they have where there is a bit of pace is the 17-year-old Nwaneri. Like, he's got a lot of legs. He's fast, and you've also got a danger with Jorginho's passing range, and he's seriously, he may be not quite in the bracket of Odegaard, but he's got a really good range of passing, a really good success rate with playing balls of different, just defense splitting passes. So I think we're still going to be really vulnerable to that, and that's the only way that Ange knows how to play. So it's what I'm going to be interested in is seeing how we set up our own midfield to combat that. And I guess Ange probably doesn't want to be second guessing and dictated to by Arsenal. It's our home game. Obviously, you'd really hope that the fans will make it very uncomfortable for Arsenal. I think that the last two derbies have fizzled, especially not so much the one the spring of this year, but the one in sort of January the year before. That was a grim match. And I didn't think the fans were good that day at all. I thought, it was one of the worst runs we were on. And I went into that absolutely convinced we were going to lose, which is crazy because our record previously had been so strong at home in those games. So I would always have felt over the last 10 years or so that, like, home, we got a really good chance. But I think the crowd have got a big part to play. I think that if we can make a good start, obviously, yes, last year was disastrous start, and it was almost impossible to come back from that, wasn't it? Like it was like just horror show.
Mm.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be incredibly tense, and I do think it can go either way. I'm sorry to say, I can imagine.
Well,
I'm dreaming, but I'm nervous as hell. I'm really nervous.
Yeah.
I think we all know what we want to happen, but
Yeah.
a draw, I'd go away from that. And this is another. I looked at the data behind how many points you can drop in a season, rather than looking at how many you need to get to win a title, and then obviously converting that to losses, wins, and draws, and kind of on averages, and seeing where you need to be. So you can typically only get away with losing 5 games maximum if you look at the last 5 title winners, if you want to win the Premier League. So apart from that Leicester season where it was really low points, typically you're going to get away with losing 5 games. And in there, you'd say there'd be 3 or 4 draws as well. So roughly speaking, it's about 18 to 20 points you can afford to drop. So Arsenal dropped 2, so 16 left for them. If they were to lose against us, you'd say 13 points left, and you're only 5 games into the season, and you've got Liverpool away, and you've got Man City away. So you're saying they're probably looking at 7 points, really, if they're kind of being conservative and saying those games we're probably not going to win, and we might get a point at best. So you're suddenly saying to them, you've got 30 matches, and you can only afford to drop points in 2 of them. So we could put a massive, massive dent in their title challenge. And that's partly why I feel like I haven't enjoyed following the Premier League and Spurs much since Arsenal have been in a title race. As concerned about them winning it as I am watching our own progress. And it kind of takes a lot of the fun off, because you're like, great, we progressed, we came 4th. But Arsenal won it, so I'm just going to bury my head in the sand and pretend that season never happened, even though there's so much to be positive about. And I feel Ange gets unfair additional pressure to succeed more quickly, because everyone wants to see us knocking on that door and stopping Arsenal winning something, and that unfairly goes on Ange. But Ben, there's been talk of some injuries on our side. Mickey van der Ven, Yves Bissouma, and Solanke. Out of those, who do you think's... Is there any in there that you think, okay, we'll be okay if they're out, versus they're imperative to us beating Arsenal, or having a chance of beating Arsenal?
I think Van der Ven for me is the one. As you said, he just provides that insurance, doesn't he? He's the reason we can get away with the high line. He's on Saka's side of the pitch. We know the damage Saka did last season. We know he's got the pace. So Saka's the one that really worries me, running in behind, and Van der Ven's the sort of answer to that, I think. So if Van der Ven's out, that does worry me quite a lot. Hopefully, he was another one. I'm sure Ange said he was close, and it was sort of caution. Yeah. So I'm hoping he's back. And as well, I think Solanke would make a huge difference, just because they did struggle with our press last season, or back in April at least. And I think, was it Arteta made a comment after the game, and he said we didn't want to play that deep. We didn't want to sort of sit back in our half, but they sort of forced us to. And our press, we kept them hemmed in for a lot of the game, right? We didn't. Yeah. Classic story. We didn't create lots with it, but we did keep them there. We should have had a second penalty. We had other chances that we could have buried. So it could have been a different game. And I think if we can get that press right against a midfield that doesn't have the legs as much. So, you say Jorginho, we pressed him into a goal last season at their place, I think, wasn't it? Maddison robbed the ball.
Yeah.
Partey, I know Arsenal fans have sort of been complaining a couple of times this season where he's not looked like he's had the legs, particularly second half. So yeah, that midfield I think is there to be got at, and if we can get our press right, and that's where I think Solanke would be a miss. Richarlison as well can press. He's obviously out. Son can do it. We saw Son do it the other week. It's it's those two. I think we can probably. I do rate Bissouma, but I think we can probably cope in that position more than we can at left centre back and at striker.
It's interesting when you look at last season's lineup, though, because we had Ben Davies starting. We had Højbjerg starting, and we had Werner starting, and Son was up front. So you'd say, if Solanke's fit, you'd say, even if Mickey's missing, Dragusin is better than Davies. Like, that's still a stronger lineup, right? And even if Bissouma's missing, I feel like we have better options than Højbjerg to play around with in that midfield. Kind of personal view that when you look at the team they had, they were only missing Jesus, I believe. looking at the lineup. So they were still pretty full strength in that game. So, and we nearly beat them, right? We got 3-0 down at half time. We came back 3-2 and kind of a classic story, they say, kind of dominated the game by doing everything except scoring enough goals.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to see. Yeah,
What's the story with Pap
go on.
Sarr? Because there was talk about Sarr picking up a knock, wasn't there, in the Mali? Is it Mali he plays for during the
I
week?
thought it was
Biss
that was
picked up a
Basuma
knock
came off.
against Mali.
Basuma
He
took it off.
scored and
There
was
was-
taken off.
I thought it was both of them.
Oh, really?
I haven't seen
Yeah,
anything
okay.
about Sarr. There's nothing on the
All right, okay, good.
Yeah.
Premier League injury list for Sarr.
We'll put that down to trolls on the internet. But
Yeah, fair enough.
we will loop back to our score predictions for the North London derby. There's also some news to flag on that there is going to be a change to the atmosphere, which I think is super positive. Most of us will. Ben, are you going to the game? You're going to be there?
No, not this weekend.
So good news for Johnny, Sai and I is they're changing the atmosphere, so there'll be less whatever they do, club music at the start, and it will be all
nice.
about getting the anthem in terms of us singing when the Spurs go, and just the trumpet will drop out a lot earlier and all that kind of stuff. So apparently, well done to, I think it was Return of the Shelf and Spurs song sheet who wrote to the club, asked them to make the change to replicate the North London derby atmosphere under Conte when it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And they've done that. So well done, guys.
We should probably
yeah.
encourage people to get to their seats a little bit earlier then as well, not just get up there for kickoff. Get up there 5-10 minutes before kickoff and get behind it and get it going.
They have asked for that as well. The clubs have went back and say, can you get into seats 10 minutes before kickoff? So it's going to be interesting to see. The flags have gone quiet, haven't they? Just
they have.
There's a lot less TIFO stuff going on. But I don't know if that's good or bad. But we'll go to score predictions at the end. We'll save them for the end. But some other topics. Bentancur's been doing the rounds lately. He's subject to get between 6 and 12 games as a ban for his comments on around Sonny, which I won't repeat on here. But I know we were chatting about this earlier.
Yeah.
You've got a pretty straight and narrow view on this, which kind of go on.
I think, I'm not going to repeat what was said. Everybody can go online and read it. It's public record. But to say what he said is blatantly racist, and I think that we have to take a stand against it. And if he's breached the rules, which is about misconduct related to a media interview, and it's aggravated by the fact that it was tainted by racial overtones. And I think whatever he gets. If I did that at work, I'd probably get the sack. And the only place I struggled with it a little bit was he apologised, but he posted the apology. I'm sure he's apologised in person when he came back to the club. And Sonny seems to have acknowledged that it was just a really bad joke. But does that make it all right? Because if you just then accept that and there's no other consequence, then you're condoning that sort of language, that sort of behaviour, and that makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable. If another player did it to Sonny on the pitch, we'd be calling for maximum ban. It's not. I just don't think it's acceptable, and you can't stand back and just ignore that because you condone it, and that's my stance on it, and it won't change my mind. It's unacceptable. I can't defend that sort of language. I can't defend that sort of behaviour, and I think whatever he gets, then he takes it, and it is what it is.
All in agreement on that? Any comments to add? All good.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add is the one thing that will frustrate people is the consistency thing. I know I've seen a lot of people mention about some of the other incidents that have gone on, and without wanting to get into that what aboutery type thing. Enzo, you would expect to see a punishment follow, and as you say, absolutely rightly, in both parties, they both deserve a punishment.
Yeah.
If 12 games is the punishment, great, but they've got to be consistent with it. Is the key, I think.
And I don't think Enzo's out of the woods yet, is he? I mean, I think that happened after the Bentancur comments as well. So I think there's still, from what I read online, there's still some stuff going on around that. But I agree with you, Ben. You've got to have that consistency, but two wrongs don't make a right? So,
yeah.
At the end of the day, though, it's consistency with everything, isn't it? Obviously, the Man City thing's back in the news again today. I mean, it's just like, it's the bottom line. If you're a teacher, you have to be consistent with whatever sanctions you take or repercussions there are, and then everybody knows where they stand. It's like the same one on the pitch. When you're getting a yellow card, the Rice second yellow, you can say it's a yellow card, fair enough. are they all going to be given for that? No, they're not, and that happens with everything. So yeah, I think obviously the weight, the significance of this issue, given that the Premier League have made a pretty strong stand on the issue of racism, we're in a very, very ethnically diverse area of London as a club. You want to be sending out the right message. You don't want to be having any double standards, and there's only one way to look at this, really.
Yeah, and I think I read as well that the charity Kick It Out had substantial complaints about it, and they do some great work. And Troy Townsend, if you've ever heard him on the Guardian Football Weekly, speaks very eloquently about the racism in football. And I also think, if anybody's sitting there and wanting to defend, and this is just my opinion, if that was a black player and it was said, then it would have very different. You wouldn't have anybody trying to defend that. So just because it's a Korean guy, I just think it's indefensible. So we can't accept this sort of behaviour in the game. It's abhorrent.
And I'm not sure the excuse washes about the cultural thing.
No.
Of course there's cultural differences, but he's been in Europe long enough. He should know that that's not acceptable. But as you say, they've got to take a stance with it. So I think it's absolutely fair enough.
And he's a 27-year-old man. He made a choice. There was risk associated to it, and there's a consequence. And it doesn't make you necessarily a horrible person when you do bad things. Everyone makes mistakes in their lives, but you have to own the consequence of your action. But anyway, we're going way away from the North London Derby on these topics. We need to go back onto plan, guys. That's what people want to listen to. Anyway, so another topic before we go back to that is David Pleat and our transfers. There's been this bizarre blow up that apparently there's two parts to this, right? So David Pleat, long story short, has been removed from his role at Tottenham, and his role before, he was very closely linked to the scouting side of the club, and he was involved with advising on transfers. Now, to be fair to David, he was linked with one of the reasons as to why we signed Dele Alli and Humanson. So, he's obviously done good player identification in the past. But apparently the club said, we don't need eyes and ears anymore, David. We're moving to this data model. See you later. And then the article goes straight to the fact, and by the way, the next conversation was, Daniel, my wife's got motor neuron disease. It's terminal. And can you help me out? Blah, blah, blah. And Daniel said nothing and just went silent on him, and he's never heard anything since. So it was kind of, I feel it was written in a way that they kind of put two very independent things that are unrelated together to try and form a bit of a narrative. But how did you guys read into that whole situation? Because it really blew up online that it was, I think, a bigger deal than it was, personally. But yeah, it's just my view.
Yeah, difficult one, because you've just got maybe a disgruntled employee's version of what's happened. Maybe that's might be what's happened. I wonder, you hear the stories of Daniel. Is he the most empathetic guy in the world? I don't know. He's a hard-nosed businessman, and listen, decided to. I think the article said that Pleat understands that he wants to go a different way and wants to go more data-driven than eyes and ears, but he disagrees, and they had a disagreement about it, and fair enough. But life moves on.
Yep. It did smell a bit of old man shouts at clouds, just really angry that his kind of job's been superseded by some supercomputer or whatever. Yeah. But it also implied that we don't use eyes and ears, and I thought that was so misleading, the whole argument online. Yeah. It was like people going, oh, it's nonsense. We just, go onto a database and pick out players. You don't know if they're a good personality or not.
Yeah.
I was thinking, Ndombele was eyes and ears.
Yeah.
Like that, Lo Celso was eyes and ears. Sanchez was eyes and ears. The data, and every player we sign on this data model has to have a phone call with Ange Postecoglous and a meeting with him for the personality test. So surely it's the best of both worlds. It's find a shortlist using the data, ask the manager if he wants them. That manager says, yes, I'd like to meet them. You arrange a meeting with that manager, who then decides whether to say yes or no to it. So I don't really understand what the issue is.
I do sort of have a soft spot for that 86-87 season where he was in charge for 1 year, though. Because that was I think that was the season that I attended the most matches at Tottenham, home and away, that I'd ever attended. Third in the league, FA Cup final, League Cup semi-final, done by them on a replay. But that was probably the most active supporting season that I've had. Clive Allen, 49 goals.
Amazing.
I'd started watching Tottenham probably in person 3 years before that, and I was 16, 17 at the time, full of testosterone, going to football. Great times.
Yeah.
Great season.
Well,
Great
Pleaty,
shirt as well that year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a great.
With the
And then we had
stripes.
that issue in the final where there was we couldn't wear the sponsor, could we, in the final? It was Glenn Hoddle's last game,
Oh,
wasn't
right.
it? That FA Cup final before he went.
That's
Before
right.
he went.
Yeah. Mm.
well, Pleaty had a lot of testosterone as well in his youth, didn't he?
Well, he
Naughty
did.
boy.
He
Naughty
did.
boy.
Yes, he had a libido to be envied. Sven
He
would have
did.
envied his libido.
Yes. So for those who don't know, maybe you haven't been following Spurs all that time ago, but Pleaty used to like paying for the services of young women in and around the club and kind of got found out for that. So it was all kind of, to be fair to the club, I know he's leaving a bit bitterly, but I'm kind of like, at the same time, they did re-employ you despite that stuff kind of being public and, help you rebrand yourself as a changed man.
Yeah. Might just want to say for the record, Jim, it was unsubstantiated, that newspaper.
All right.
Just to cover our, just to make sure
Alleged.
that we're not earning enough out of this podcast to cover legal costs at the moment. I don't think.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. Yeah, we do say. So, Thomas Partey. No, I'm not going to.
He knows what he is.
Yeah, not going down that
As
one.
you say, with Pleat, it's a difficult one because he does acknowledge it's going in a data-driven direction, and it's nothing really against him, is it? But it's the right way to be going, isn't it? It's just the way, like with eyes and ears, you're so limited, it's so inefficient, isn't it? You can only watch a few games a week. It just makes so much more sense to employ this ever more available huge sets of data that you can scout across every league in the world within 20 minutes. You can build a profile, you can get your shortlist, and then you send your eyes and your ears out and you go and have a look. And I assume, I don't know, as you say, I'm reading between the lines a bit, but I assume maybe he doesn't like that it's being led that way, because there's no way we're not doing the eyes and ears bit. Of course we're going to go out and look at these players. So I think maybe he just doesn't like the fact that it's not all down to the older fashioned methods of you go out and you hear about a player, you go watch them, you use your instincts, all that stuff still applies, but it's just not efficient anymore. You've got ways of doing it so much more efficiently.
Absolutely.
You get your shortlist, you get the players, and then you go have a look and you narrow it down. So I think it feels to me, it does feel a little bit like he's slightly bitter, and you're hearing one side of the story. It doesn't sound great from a Levy perspective, but at the same time, like you say, it's someone who has been let go, giving you their side of it. You can only read so much into it, I think, really.
Jim, when is the actual dismissal? When was that supposed to have happened?
I'm not sure. That's 2022.
Right.
Pleaty was involved with transfers between 2010 and 2022, and this is the other part of the argument, right? It's like our transfers were pretty damn shoddy and inconsistent between 2010 and 2022.
So Paratici was just before Paratici came in, or in and around about then, presumably?
Yes, the Paratici did overlap, but you'd credit Paratici with Kulusevski and Bentancur, not Pleat. That was clearly his signings. So they weren't all bad. Like we had Toby Alderweireld, Jan Vertonghen, some great players, Dele Alli.
Yeah.
In many ways, Eric Dyer had a good career with us overall.
Yeah.
Sonny.
Soldado, Paulinho.
Lloris. Soldado, yeah. But then you go down the list of Kirakes, Fazio, Yedlin, Soldado, Janssen,
Clinton NG,
Dombele, Lo Celso. It goes on and on.
Eyes and ears.
Yeah.
I did see a list going around of players that he apparently recommended to the club and that we never went with, and there were some good players on there, but equally he's not going to be screaming about all the ones he recommended that turned out to be
exactly
up in the National League, is he? So of course it's like Arsene Wenger when he used to say, we nearly signed Mbappe, we nearly signed Ronaldo, all these different players, Messi, but
Redknapp signed nearly everyone, didn't he?
He's another one.
Who was the striker that would have tied in with Pleaty's time that went to West Brom when he drove to our training ground?
Is that Mwingi, was it?
Yeah. And he's now in League
Peter
2 in Belgium, or I can't remember now.
Turned
but anyway,
up at the training ground, didn't he?
That's right.
Yeah, and I saw people blaming blaming the club for his failed career, because apparently we got his head around the idea of joining Spurs, and then when it didn't work out, he was so emotionally drained because of us, he could never pick himself up and go again. So it's Levy's fault. He destroyed a young man's career. Look,
Bless him.
there's a repeating pattern, and we don't want to go into we don't go into all the politics and stuff, but the repeating pattern is the way we handle things on a human level isn't good as a club, typically. But there's also a just collective movement to just try and link every bad thing to the same couple of individuals at the club, and it just gets equally exhausting. But yeah, I think we all agree that
hopefully, in terms of the playing side of things now, at least, although Ange is kind of, I wouldn't say cold, but he doesn't get close to the players and stuff like that. He obviously still really values human traits and character hugely. And kind of thinking there's like a little alarm bells about the Spence omission from the Europa League, given that he just sort of turned things around and had a good preseason. And sort of think, well, I really hope that that's obviously not going to be Levy's conversation. That when Ange is doing this, as he is when he's recruiting players and having those valuable phone calls, that he's had a. I'd love to know what he said to Jed Spence when he's made that decision, and maybe Jed Spence is going to play a bigger part in the Premier League than we kind of assumed he would. But and I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's kind of there's a link there, and just the communication of things, and as you said, the way that some players, some servants who've been with the club for a long time, how things have ended have not been the way they should have, and I think that's something that definitely you'll want to see improved.
Yeah, agree. But on the Spence bit you mentioned at the start there, and as well, by the way, that's Donna Cullens, the PR lady, is kind of how I look at it as well, and it's often directed at someone else. But anyway, the Spence thing, someone made a good point. We all discussed the last pod, 4 goalkeepers and 1 right back, make it make sense or whatever it is. But there was a good point that maybe this is a sign that Ange is prioritising the domestic trophies, and that Spence will be getting a lot more time in the League Cup and the FA Cup, and maybe the Europa League is less of a priority. Maybe we're overanalyzing it, but it still means you can't prioritise every cup. When Arsenal have done well in the league the last 3 seasons, people won't say, so Arteta won a cup in his first year, obviously, with Emery's squad. But when they went far in the cups in his first 2 seasons, they came 8th and 8th. And then the following 3 seasons, they pretty much went out the first round of the League Cup and FA Cup. And then they did significantly better in the league. And Liverpool, when they won the Champions League, went out of the FA Cup and League Cup in the first round. And when they won the Premier League, I think they went out in the first round of each competition as well, pretty much. So it's like there has to be some level of prioritisation in competitions. You can't go on all fronts. I would like to see us go full strength every week in one of the Europa League, FA Cup or League Cup. I know the rest will rotate, but I would like to treat one as seriously as the Premier League and just really, really double down on it and see how far we can go.
I guess the thing with the Europa is you've got margin for error early on in the group stage, so we can afford to, you know, if you drop a few silly points early on, you've got to finish, is it top 8 or top 10? Yeah, we should be able to manage that with our fixtures, he says. Whereas if you rock up against Coventry, the Coventry is probably where we find out, because if Spence, if he's involved, then maybe he's sort of pushing Spence towards the domestic cups and the Premier League bench. Whereas if he's not on the bench against Arsenal, and then if he isn't involved against Coventry, we've probably got our answer, and it's probably something's happened.
Yeah, just hope he hasn't fallen out of favour again. That'd just be the worst news. Sorry. It's I think a case of getting through to January. I think that history says we will make 2 signings in January. It's typically what we've done every transfer window. As we've spent between 20 and 50 million pounds on 1 to 2 players just to give that squad a little bit of a leg up. But it's a hard window to get right. Should we go into some score predictions, guys, for the game? Yeah, okay. I'll start with you, Ben, then. Go on. Give you the prediction, but also the goal scorers.
So I was leaning towards a 2-1 Spurs all this week until this afternoon. This afternoon, that potential of Van der Ven, and I was so confident they would be back, but that's shaken me a bit. So I'm going to go 2-2, I think, and I'm going to go Son and Madison.
Johnny.
Similar. I wasn't really. Yeah, I was never feeling particularly confident about a win, but I don't think we'll lose. He says stupidly. Sorry, you can see your face. You're not impressed by that. I'm gonna say 2-2 as well. I think there's always going to be sort of potential errors, and there's good quality finishing on both teams. So I'm gonna go with Sonny as well, and somebody less obvious. I hope that Sarr is fit and he can hit the back of the net. It'd be nice.
So,
Yeah, God, it's horrible, isn't it? It's horrible because your head says one thing, your heart is wanting something else. So I think if I'm going to be a little bit logical about it, I think even in the games where we've dropped points this season, we've played really well. We played really well against Newcastle, and we no way deserved to lose that game. Leicester, we should have blasted them out of the park. So when this clicks, I think it's really going to click, and I hope it starts clicking on Sunday. That said, they're a decent side, by the way, and it's horrible. And like Ben, I can't enjoy these games unless we're 2-3 up with a minute to go. And then I can start enjoying them. So with that, I think my heart says 2-1, my head says 2-2. I think being at home, I don't think Ange will allow them to let what happened last year in the first half happen again. I think there will be a real drive to get at them. And I think Solanke will start. I think he'll get his first goal for us. And I think I'm going to go with a Solanke opener and a Decky equaliser. I think we'll go down 2-1, and I think we'll get back with a Decky equaliser.
yeah, I think we'll be... They'll come... They always press so hard in the first 15 minutes, and that won't change. So I think there's... Especially if Mickey's out, there's a mistake in that defence even full strength, or there's a goal that's conceded there. So I think we'll go 1-0 down in the first 20 minutes. But I do think that we'll come back second half to win if Solanke's playing. I think if Solanke's not playing, I'd say the maximum number of goals I could see us scoring against them is 1 or 2 if we're lucky, because their defence is outstanding.
Solid.
It's the best defence in the league, arguably. And when we don't have a fit number 9 on there, I'm concerned that we're limiting ourselves to 1 or 2 goals max, so probably 1. So I'd say, like, if Solanke's not fit, we're probably looking at something like a 1-1. But I've got a feeling if Solanke is fit, it's going to be an insane game end to end, where it's going to be us probably 2-0 down at some point, thinking how are we 2-0 down, we've been a better side, and then coming back to get to 2-2 in the 80th minute. And then if, this is the big if depending, when we play at Spurs, we normally kick off the first half going towards the north, and the second half is towards south. But Everton made us swap when they won the touring toss.
Yeah.
If Arteta does that, I don't think we'll get the winning goal. But I think if we're going back to the south stand in the second half, we'll suck that ball into the net, and it will be 3-2, and we'll have an hour of absolute joy after the game. Concourse will be rocking. I mean, even
one prediction. There will be a curveball from Ange in that lineup somewhere.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
There will be something that everyone just goes, what? Because it seems to happen every week at the moment. We'll see. We'll see what that is.
Well, we don't know our best midfield.
No.
I don't think. And that to me says we still haven't signed everyone he wants to sign, because he still clearly feels that midfield isn't complete. He's kind of trying to make it work. And we don't really know what the best right wing starting position probably is at the moment. I think
it's those two positions, isn't it? Right wing and then maybe right centre mid, where you got sort of Sarr, Verbal, Kulusevski all sort of vying for Bentancur.
There's a question: does he go with the 6-6 or a 8-8? Because Kulusevski and Maddison look quite good together in that 8-8 role, and I don't know, being at home, is that an option for him?
Yeah,
could be. That could be the curveball.
Nice.
Yeah, putting them under pressure feels like
Sonny
I do
wide
think they struggled.
left. Sonny wide left, Johnson wide right, Kulu and Maddison in the middle with Biss or Sarr sitting behind.
Yeah, and go out.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Villa did that, right? They basically put a box around Arsenal's midfield and tried to just press it super, super aggressively. And it did, weirdly, Arsenal won, but they were Villa dominated more than they did the previous season when they beat Arsenal. Like, the tactic almost worked, but Arsenal just had better players, and the defence is just really good.
Wasn't it, for Watkins? Yeah. It's just, when do you see him? It's not one but two of those chances.
Just that header. That header. Yeah. What's he doing?
I know.
Anywhere else.
The goal from Sonny during the week was something else, wasn't it? For
South
Korea?
It was.
Good goal.
Yeah.
Beautiful finish.
Yeah, he's finished, isn't he? Nice. He's finished his legs again.
Yeah.
We did a game on Twitter, actually. You can answer this in the comments section if you're watching on YouTube. But You can only keep one of Son or Kane in our history. So like you've got to erase the history of one. One never played. Men in Black Star with the pen. One's gone. Who are you getting rid of?
We'll leave that to the comments, Jim.
Just
Hard
because you
one.
don't have to go for the heartbreak and all the shit
Totally.
that it ended with. You just be happy. You just be like, we got Son. There was no Kane to come and go, and we had a great finish with Son. It feels like it's leading up to a nice end.
Yeah.
But Kane, you have to go through the whole Bayern thing, the divisive arguments between fans.
You never felt
and...
that Kane was emotionally attached to us like Sonny is.
No, he's
Never.
He was.
Yeah, Son's easy to have a connection with, isn't he? It's just everyone loves him. He's just he's just lovable. Whereas
Kane was
whereas
amazing,
Kane
by
was a
the
bit
way. That's
aloof
not
sometimes.
It's not devaluing what he did, but Sonny loves us.
Yeah. And Kane's a lovely chap, but he's a good family man, model pro. Don't dislike him at all. You just don't think he's got a poster of Tottenham on his wall in his bedroom. Whereas I think Sonny
pure
does.
on the pitch ability, I'd still have to have Kane, just because of the variety, the passes, the goals, some of the goals he scored at the Arsenal one alone. But Son, if you got the whole package, then I'd probably edge Son, which is a fence-sitting answer. But
totally splinters there, Ben.
You can
Just
have
can't wait
prime.
to see when we win something and he's lifting the trophy. It's just going to be so satisfying to see Sonny of all people to get us
It'd be amazing.
Those
Just
chunks or whatever he's holding.
Yeah, he deserves it. I'd love him to win the Europa League. I think it would be a really nice thing because it's like a Tottenham tradition to win the Europa League, is what we've won twice in the past. It just feels like fitting to us as a club that's
Well, we're favourites for that, aren't we? Which is and
we're favourites.
Horrible position.
Man United in the final.
Mate, don't stop it.
I'll give you another choice. You can have prime for the rest of the season. You can have prime Modric back or prime Dembele back
with the rest of the players around them.
Okay. Yeah, so just in the current squad, you can bring him back 25 years old in prime. Dembele. Really? You think he's better midfielder than Modric?
No, better for what we need in this squad.
We've got a lot of what Modric provided, I think.
We've got a lot of attacking midfielders, but we haven't got that ball carrying. No, Dembele for me, he's a beautiful player.
Would you swap prime Madison now for prime Van der Vaart? You wouldn't. Oh, it's North London derby though, Johnny.
Van der Vaart's the same as Sonny, isn't he?
Love it.
Van der Vaart, exactly. That's he was the same as Sonny. He
got it quickly as well. He got us quickly, didn't he?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So there's some tough ones. Okay, and the last one is two more actually. Vertonghen or Mickey van der Ven.
Is it prime or early stage?
Prime.
I think if you're
prime versus
Van der Ven hasn't hit his prime, has he? So it's a tricky one.
Vertonghen at this age, his age, I guess. Then you've got to go for, don't you?
So maybe the question there is though: is it Alderweireld Vertonghen or Alderweireld Mickey? Because Vertonghen not playing with Alderweireld was a different player than when he played with Alderweireld.
Danny Rose or Udogie. This one was quite controversial. I thought Udogie's way higher ceiling and it was an easy answer, but Danny was.
Well, just that first goal from Rose
got him.
Puts him up there, doesn't it?
Yeah. But then when Poch came in, he said, "Oh, I'll get you back playing for England," and he did. He was incredible. That last season at White Hart Lane.
For a couple of seasons, him and Walker were just amazing, weren't they?
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah,
he was one of those players that the art of selling is. We had a lot of interest for him. It's hindsight, of course, but that's where clubs like Liverpool are so good, aren't they? They seem to be able to sell them at the right time, and that was probably the right time to let him go.
This is where we as fans are a bit sentimental as well. Like we're talking about Sonny now. We had this debate loads of times. 90% of us would say, I don't care if Saudi drop £100 million, he's worth more than that to us. We're keeping him. Whereas I think if he was at Liverpool, maybe they'd take the money. But then again, they kept Salah, didn't they? And they got tempted by the money and they didn't want to go with him.
Sonny wouldn't have gone to there anyway.
No, he wouldn't go anyway, And I do agree, he's probably worth more to us than just... it's the time where you need some stability amongst a lot of change.
Especially with the young players coming through, you need those senior figures in your dressing room, don't you?
Yep, exactly. And last one is Ollie Skip or Glenn Hoddle.
It's a toss of a coin, that, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I mean...
I'll throw
Hoddle-
Winks in
Hoddle
there
was-
as well to really
yeah.
make you think about it. Yeah.
Too
Skip
bold,
hasn't hit
wasn't
his
he?
prime
Hoddle?
yet.
Oh, yeah.
So once he hits his prime, it's obviously going to be Skip. But
Yeah. Winks or
First
Gascoigne.
touches.
Winks or
Yeah.
Gascoigne.
I think that'd have been funny to have in the dressing room, Winks and Gascoigne. They couldn't be two opposites, could they? Imagine him just dragging Winksy around strip clubs all night and just be like,
Oh
I want
my
to go home. Really
With
wanna
an
go
ostrich.
home." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And his air
Um,
rifle.
One more thing, if you're in the famous 30% who are still listening right to the end, I need your help. We need your help. We've got some awesome guests, like I said, coming on, like Hotspur Hippie, Ben Bowman, Ben White, of course, on right now. I've got other people in the pipeline. I don't want to give it all away. I want to save some of these for you. We've got some really, really good ones. But the bigger we are, the more we can get. And we've made this whole thing about being a toxic-free podcast. We don't go into those divisive, horrible, negative topics. We like to bring like-minded people on who fit the culture of the pod. Can you pass the pod on to a mate who supports Spurs? Just send the link and just tell them, if you like it, that you really like the pod and you would really recommend this Tottenham pod. That would do us a big favour. And if you're one of those people as well that listens, because 80% of our listeners do this, they listen every week and they don't subscribe. So one day the YouTube algorithm will go, you're not being recommended that anymore because the season's over. It's been a month break for internationals. You haven't seen our stuff and we'll float away into the abyss and you'll never find us again. But if you subscribe, that won't happen. So subscribe to our channel, please. Just click
Jim's
the bell. You literally just
existential
click
message.
a button. You click a
I'm
button.
really worried about the abyss. Oh,
Yeah, I don't want
Yeah,
the
the
abyss,
abyss.
Jim. Don't
Yeah.
send us to the abyss.
And Australian Ange fans, we love you. We've got lots of you growing and growing and growing. You better not leave us if Levy screws him over.
Actually,
We're with Ange. We're on your side, right?
Uh.
We're on your side. And we are in the top 15 podcasts in Australia for sport, right?
Jesus.
no way.
I think it's football specifically, actually, soccer.
Wow.
So we're not
That's
losing
quite
our
good.
crown here. We're going for number one
Okay.
football podcast in Australia. You better not ditch us if Ange ditches us, all right?
Careful,
I'll be-
Andrew.
I'll be fuming. We've really liked engaging with you. Vaz, the Spurs guy, Rick, Terry, many others. You're part of the family now, guys. You're always active in those comments sent. We've got Peters over in the US in Australia as well. I lost them all now.
yeah, don't
Just
make him
link
come
them
down
with
there.
Americans.
He'll do it.
Yeah.
And we like you
Come on,
Americans as
Jim.
well. We've got
Jim's
20%
having
of
a
our listeners are in
meltdown.
America as well. So we like you guys too. But yeah, okay, that's my rant over. Thanks for joining everyone. Up the Spurs. Roll on the
Come
North
on, you
London Derby.
Spurs.
No, you Spurs.